All right, guys, this is a quick run through of the unit plan option if you're selecting it for the final. If you are doing the lesson review, there's no video for you. You can turn this off. But if you are thinking about approaching the unit option, I'm just going to run through the parts and how to actually build them out. So you'll remember from the assignment that there's three products that are involved in creating the unit plan, or what is really an assessment plan for the unit. And I just want to be clear here, you do not have to develop the entirety of the unit. What you're essentially doing is creating a plan for assessments in the unit. That's going to include a couple pieces. One is it's going to include developing the unit learning goals. It's going to be developing an assessment plan overview, which I'll explain in a second. And it's going to mean developing the pre-assessment and the summative assessment, including the scoring tool. So you'll need to do the pre and essentially the post task and how you would grade it. Those are the three components. Now the last one is pretty self-explanatory, and I've put up in the assignment folder a chapter on pre-assessments that you can take a look at if you want some guidance on that. But otherwise, you know what to do. This is develop a performance assessment or some form of unit test or some summative assignment, and make sure you have a scoring tool to support it, and then also develop a pre-assessment. It's the first two I want to clarify because they're a little bit unique for this assignment. So here's a good time to get out the document that's titled Unit Plan Tools. We're going to be using that. I'm going to be expecting you to use that for your final. There's just a couple of planning tools that I want to go over. And the first page has this box that you're going to see. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at this unit plan as a whole, and I want you to identify all of the relevant standards that you're going to be using. And these standards could be pulled from the Common Core. You might also pull them from content-specific standards such as the NGSS, the I3, the Illinois State Standards, etc. So you'll see at the top here, one thing I want you to distinguish is between standards that you're going to assess, that is, your assessments are going to be built around attending to those particular skills or content in the standards, and standards that are just going to be addressed in the unit. So to give you a good example, you may require students to type their papers out or use technology to support a piece of writing, which is Common Core Standard number 5, Writing Standard number 5 or 6, if I recall. You may be expecting that, but you may not actually be assessing students for their ability to, say, type something out or use technology appropriately. So you might put that in the standards addressed. You might be doing a lot of speaking and listening in the unit, but you might not, your major assessments may not actually be assessing speaking and listening. So that the speaking and listening would go to standards addressed, and the standards you are actually assessing are going to go in that left-hand column, because you're going to use those things to determine how you're going to build out your assessment plan. So my point here is you're going to first list out the standards you intend to assess, because you're going to then take a look at those standards in the left-hand column there, and you're going to develop your unit learning goals based on the standards. In other words, you might have 10 standards that you're addressing, and that's a hypothetical number. It's not a requirement. Your unit goals may be boiled down to 3 to 5 things that you want students to take away with during the course of the unit. But here's the thing. Those unit learning goals that are going to be those key concept, skill, or knowledge takeaways, they're going to inform your summative assessment. They're going to be what you pre-assess for and what you post-assess for. So I would anticipate you would have, say, 3 to 5 learning goals on that bottom. And I want to make sure that you remember from the performance assessment piece that you're not just generally assessing skill, but that you're also including whatever content or concept knowledge that students should also have. Reasoning too, if that matters. So again, you're going to list the standards that you intend to directly assess in the unit in the left-hand column, and any standards that will be taken up in the unit, such as like speaking and listening, such as things that might support the standards assessed, can go in the standards addressed. And then your unit learning goals are going to address sort of the core 3 to 5 takeaways, the skills that they're going to learn, the reasoning they're going to invoke, the content, the concepts they're going to learn that they're going to take away at the end of the unit. And it's those learning goals that are then going to inform the next step, which is the assessment plan. So in this document, I'm going to have you list the learning goals in the left-hand column. And then I want you to come up with the details of the assessments that are going to support the learning goals. Now, this is essentially your outline for the unit. You do not have to make me a calendar. You don't have to write out every single assessment. What I want you to do, though, is create a set of assessments. Imagine you had the unit in your head, and I want you to create a set of assessments that match and address the learning goal. So you can see on this first line here, I gave you an example, right? So imagine you were doing that 8th grade science class that some of you looked at for your performance assessment. One of your goals might be to identify and apply laboratory safety procedures. So once you've identified that learning goal and you've transferred it over, the next step then is to identify how are you going to address that goal in the assessments that you have. So I've made it easy for you. Let's just assume you have a pre-assessment and a summative assessment, and we'll call the things in between formative, right? So what I want to know is that given that learning goal, what are the multiple opportunities students are going to have across this unit to be assessed on this learning goal? So you can see a pre-assessment here might involve students brainstorming what they know about safety procedures, and a summative assessment may mean that students actually perform the safety procedures in a laboratory setting, right? Or you can see here, I've included more than one summative assessment of this learning goal, a fully and correctly include procedures in a lab write-up. Then you can see in the in-between, right, what are some other ways I might assess students' knowledge of this particular goal? So you can see I've offered 2 different situations in which they are to demonstrate what they know. Now, the accommodations piece we're going to get to on the 9th, but you can see here I've included what could be done to support diverse learners in the right-hand column. So what you're going to do is for each of these standards, these learning goals that you set outside, let me make sure that I'm clear. For each of the learning goals you've decided for the unit, you're going to list them in the left-hand column, and then you're going to list the set of assessments that are going to address and support students' coherent scaffolding towards the summative assessment, towards independence. And then finally, the last thing you're going to do is you're going to name the accommodations for the student based on the diverse learner profile of your school or your classroom. So that's it on my end. I just want to go over one more time here. The 3 pieces you're going to do for this assignment are the unit learning goals, which I described here, the assessment plan overview, which is right here, and the fully developed pre-assessment and summative assessment. Summative assessment could be a performance task, a unit test, a project, etc. I simply want you to develop that out as if you were handing it out, assignment to the kids, and including the scoring tool that you'll use as well. And again, I've included a chapter on developing pre-assessment up on D2L for your benefit.